The stars around the red moons of Rilkara were calm and quiet. A small science ship from Earth floated nearby. It was not a warship. It had no weapons. It was filled with peaceful people who loved to study and learn. They were scientists, students, and explorers. They had traveled far into space to collect light samples, measure energy waves, and explore the quiet beauty of the galaxy. They believed the stars were full of knowledge, not danger. But not everyone in the galaxy wanted peace. Far away, the Varnock Empire watched. They lived on dark planets and ruled through fear. They had sharp machines, cold minds, and eyes that never blinked. They did not like Earth. They thought humans were soft and slow. The Varnock believed that Earth was too far away to fight back. They saw the small science ship near Rilkara and decided to send a message, a cruel one. In the middle of the night, the Varnock ship arrived. It did not speak. It did not ask questions. It opened its cold metal doors and took 10 humans from the science ship. The lights on the human ship turned red. Alarms rang, people screamed, but it was too late. In only a few minutes, 10 people were gone, taken into the dark. The Varnock gave no names. They gave no reason. They just left, silent as smoke. Back on the science ship, the others were in shock. They searched the halls. They checked the doors. They tried to send messages for help, but the Varnock had blocked everything. The 10 missing people were not soldiers. They were not fighters. They were young engineers, old scientists, and kind workers. Some had just arrived on the ship that week. Others had worked there for years. Each one had family. Each one had friends. But now they were gone. The Varnock ship disappeared into space without a sound. No one knew where it went. No one knew why the 10 were taken. Everyone hoped they were still alive. But one day later, a short message arrived at Earth's nearest listening post. The message was just 4 words: judged, executed, do not ask. The people on Earth were horrified. They could not believe it. How could the Varnock do such a thing? The 10 had done nothing wrong. They were not on Varnock land. They had not broken any laws. But now they were dead, taken from the stars and erased without justice. The news spread fast. Families cried. Teachers, classmates, and coworkers were heartbroken. A mother held the last picture of her daughter. A father sat in silence. A best friend stared out the window, wishing they had said goodbye. Around the world, people asked the same question. Why? Why would the Varnock do this? But the Varnock did not answer. In their tall, dark cities, the leaders of the Varnock Empire sat on their golden chairs. They wore masks that hid their faces. They looked at the stars and laughed. Earth will not fight back, they said. They are too far, too soft. They will cry and move on. The Varnock believed Earth was too small to matter. They believed no one in the galaxy would care about 10 quiet humans. But they were wrong. The 10 who were taken were not strangers. They were daughters, sons, friends, and lovers. One of them was the niece of a human admiral. Another was a young man who had once saved a child from a space fire. One was a famous computer builder. Another had helped stop a virus from spreading on a colony moon. Each one had someone who cared. Each one had someone who would not forget. On Earth, something began to change. People who had once worked quietly in labs began to talk to each other. Pilots who had retired started flying again. Engineers who had built peaceful tools began to design something else. In cities and spaceports, in farms and oceans, a new kind of silence filled the air. It was not the silence of fear. It was the silence of focus, the silence of planning. But Earth did not send soldiers. There were no bombs, no rockets, no big speeches. Instead, Earth listened. They listened to whispers. They studied the paths of Varnock ships. They traced every signal, every move, every order. They watched what the Varnock did not protect. They paid attention to what the Varnock forgot. The stars did not shine any brighter. The wind in the cities did not blow any faster. But something was building, something strong, something careful, something the Varnock could not see. The galaxy stayed quiet. Some planets turned away, afraid to be involved. Others did not believe humans would act. They thought Earth would forgive and forget. They thought the humans would send flowers, not fire. But Earth was not sleeping. The 10 had been taken without warning. Their lives had been ended without trial. But their memory lived on not just in tears, but in the hands of those left behind. A small boy on Mars wrote the names of the 10 on a wall. A grandmother on Luna baked 10 small cakes and left them near the stars. A group of students in the belt created a tiny light satellite that blinked once every 10 seconds. It whispered the names into space, again and again, for anyone who might be listening. And far away in deep black rooms with no windows, Earth's thinkers gathered. These were not loud people. They had no titles, no flags, and no news cameras. But they had lost someone. A cousin, a friend, a partner. They looked at each other with hard eyes and nodded. They made no promises. They only got to work. They didn't want war, but they would not allow this pain to go unanswered. The Varnock thought no one would notice. They thought they were too strong to be challenged, but they forgot something. They forgot that humans may be quiet, but they are not weak. They may be kind, but they are not foolish. They may cry, but they also remember. The 10 who were taken were not forgotten. The stars above Earth kept shining. The moons kept turning, but something had changed forever. The people of Earth had been hurt, and though they said nothing out loud, their hearts were full. Not with anger, not with fear, but with one powerful truth. This must never happen again. The Varnock thought they could hurt humans in the dark. But the galaxy was watching, and Earth was listening. The 10 humans taken by the Varnock were not just names on a list. Each of them had a story. Each of them had people who loved them, missed them, and remembered their smile. These were not random people. These were sons and daughters, friends and helpers. They were people who had touched many lives. They were not famous across the galaxy, but they were known and loved in homes, schools, ships, and cities. One of the humans was a girl named Raina. She had bright eyes and loved stars. She was the youngest on the science ship. She had just finished her studies and wanted to see a real comet up close. Her mother, General Elira, was one of Earth's most respected leaders. Elira had fought in 2 space wars but never lost her kindness. She cried when she heard her daughter was gone. Her hands shook. Her heart broke. But inside her, something cold and clear began to grow. She had once protected cities. Now she wanted to protect the memory of her child. Another human was Dr. Levin. He was a quiet man who loved to read. He had saved over 100 colonists from a virus 2 years earlier. People called him a hero, but he never liked attention. He just wanted peace and learning. His partner, Kai, was a builder of space farms on Mars. When Kai learned of Levin's death, he sat on the ground and wept. He could not understand how someone so gentle could be taken so cruelly. But after some time, he stood up. He wiped his tears. Then he began to send messages to every person he had ever helped. He told them, "Don't forget Levin, tell his story." One of the 10, Myra, was a deep space pilot. She once guided a broken ship through an asteroid field to safety. She had no family, but she had a crew who loved her like a sister. Her captain, a woman named Tessa, had trained her since she was a teen. Tessa stared at Myra's photo for hours. She could still hear Myra's laugh, still see her joy when they found new stars. Now that joy was gone, but Tessa didn't let the pain stop her. She called her old friends from flight school. She said only 5 words: "We must not stay silent." Another was Nico, a young man with strong hands and a kind heart. He had worked in the engine room of the science ship. He kept the power running and fixed what was broken. His older brother, Jalen, was a commander on a defense base near Saturn. When Jalen heard what happened, he stared at the stars for a long time. He had always told Nico to be careful. He had promised to protect him. Now it was too late. But Jalen made a new promise, to make sure the world would never forget his brother's name. Lena was one of the 10. She was not a fighter, but she was brave in her own way. She loved to teach. She had helped young students on the science ship understand black holes. Many called her Miss Lena with love. She kept drawings her students gave her. She believed every child was a star. Her best friend, Sarah, was a space station doctor. When Lena was taken, Sarah wrote her name on the walls of the station and covered them with candles. Every night, the hallways glowed with soft light. Every person who passed by knew someone beautiful had been lost. Then there was Tommen, an older man with gray hair and a loud voice. He had helped design the ship's shields. He had seen many years, many missions. People said he had a joke for every moment. He made others feel safe. He was like a grandfather to the crew. His grandson, Milo, was just starting school on Earth. He did not fully understand what had happened. But when he saw his mother cry, he knew something bad had taken place. He drew a picture of Tommen flying in the stars and gave it to a local news reporter. The next day, the picture was on every screen on Earth. The other four were just as loved, just as missed. One of them, Fiona, was a musician. She played the flute during quiet nights on the ship. Her songs helped people sleep. Her sister, Maya, worked at Earth's main music school. Maya created a concert in her honor. 10 flutes played at once, one for each person lost. The music floated through cities, through forests, through sky towers. People stopped to listen. Some cried, others stood still. All felt the pain and beauty in the sound. Another was Paolo, a cook. He made meals that reminded people of home. On birthdays, he baked small cakes and placed candles on top. People on the ship said his food healed sadness. His twin brother, Leo, was a scientist in orbit around Jupiter. He didn't speak much, but after hearing the news, he took a photo of Paolo and placed it beside his lab controls. Every time he did an experiment, he looked at the picture and said, "This one is for you." Suri was another. She worked in communications. She loved codes and puzzles. She once stayed up for 2 nights to repair a broken signal system that saved a ship in trouble. Her old teacher, Mr. Han, heard about her death and reopened the school she used to attend. He renamed it Suri's Signal School. He promised to teach students how to listen to every voice, even quiet ones, and to never take silence lightly. Last was Bryn. He had only been on the ship for 1 month. He was quiet, shy, and new to space, but he had already made friends. He loved to take pictures of stars and write poems. He had sent a poem to his younger sister on Earth just 1 day before he was taken. It said, "The stars are big, the world is wide, but my heart is always by your side." She read it again and again. She held it close every night. She told her mother, "He didn't say goodbye, but this is enough." All across Earth, the memories of the 10 moved through homes, schools, and cities. People lit candles in windows. Teachers told their students stories. Pilots flew in quiet formation in the sky. Scientists placed photos on their desks, and builders carved names into walls of metal and stone. These were not just names, they were stories, they were reasons to care. The Varnock Empire had thought it could act without notice. They believed no one would remember. They thought Earth would be too weak, too far, too afraid to fight back. But Earth had something the Varnock did not understand: love. Love gave strength. Love gave memory. Love gave a reason to stand, to plan, to act. The 10 were gone, but they lived in every person who had ever shared a laugh with them. They lived in every letter, photo, and message. They lived in music, in meals, in machines, in poems. They were still here, not in body, but in spirit, in memory, in purpose. The Varnock had taken lives, but they could not erase the meaning of those lives. All over the galaxy, others began to see. Other species who had lost people to the Varnock began to tell their own stories. A quiet wave of truth began to spread. The Varnock had not just harmed 10 people, they had started a movement. A movement made of memory. A movement made of sorrow, but also of strength. The 10 had someone who cared, and those people were not sitting still. They were rising. They were remembering. And soon they would act. The Varnock Empire had no idea what was coming. They thought Earth would stay quiet. They believed the humans would cry for a few days and then forget. They had made this mistake before, hurting those they believed were weak. But humans were not like the others. Humans were not the kind to forget. In the days after the 10 were taken, nothing loud happened. There were no big battles, no angry speeches. Earth stayed silent on the outside, but deep beneath the surface something was beginning. It was slow, calm, and quiet, like water gathering before a storm. The first sign was small. A ship went missing in deep space. It belonged to the Varnock, but it had no soldiers. It was a cargo ship full of food and machines. It was there one day and the next it was gone. No fire, no fight, just silence. The Varnock shrugged. It was pirates, they said, nothing new. But they were wrong. A week later, a space station at the edge of the Varnock territory stopped working. All its systems failed. The lights went dark. The power shut down. The workers were safe, but they could not explain what happened. Nothing was broken, yet nothing worked. The Varnock sent engineers. They tried to reboot the systems, but the codes were gone. The files had vanished. It was as if someone had erased everything perfectly. Again, the Varnock did not worry. Just bad luck, they said. But the pattern had begun. All across the edges of the galaxy, little things started going wrong. A transport ship went off course and never came back. A mining center stopped sending messages. A factory that made weapons for the Varnock shut down after its machines all turned off at the same moment. No one knew who was behind it. There were no bombs, no bodies, just sudden silence. Earth never claimed it. No messages were sent. No warnings were given. But deep in quiet rooms across the solar system, humans watched carefully. They studied every map. They tracked every ship. They worked late into the night, fixing what the Varnock broke and learning how to make sure it would never happen again. The people of Earth did not want to start a war. They did not want to bring fire to the stars, but they had lost something precious, 10 innocent lives, and for that they would not stay still. They would not use hate. They would not use fear. They would use skill, patience, and purpose. On a small moon near Saturn, a human team made a new kind of signal. It was silent and invisible. It moved through machines like wind. Once it touched a Varnock system, it froze it from the inside. No harm, no noise, just stillness. The Varnock called it the ghost signal. They tried to block it, but they failed. On Mars, builders created drones that looked like pieces of space dust. They floated near Varnock supply ships, listening and learning. If a ship carried weapons, the drones sent a silent message back to Earth. Soon after, the ship would lose power and drift into deep space, far from any help. The crew would be safe, but the weapons would be gone. On Earth's moon, hackers studied old Varnock codes. They found mistakes in the system, hidden doors, weak locks. They slipped in without leaving a trace. They did not steal anything. They did not damage anything. But they left small signs behind, just enough for the Varnock to know someone had been there. And still, Earth said nothing. This made the Varnock nervous. For the first time in years, they did not feel safe. They looked over their shoulders. They checked their machines twice. They started to doubt their power. Every ship they lost, every system that failed felt like a whisper from the dark. We have not forgotten. The Varnock tried to hide the truth. They told their people everything was fine. They blamed storms, broken parts, old wires. But in private, their leaders began to worry. Too many things were happening, too fast, too perfect. Back on Earth, the movement grew. It started in small ways. People who had once worked on farms now fixed satellites. Teachers became coders. Bakers became builders. Everyone wanted to help, even in tiny ways. Some wrote letters, some made videos, some just lit candles in windows. The message was the same. We are still here. We are still strong. Children learned the names of the 10 who were taken. Schools held quiet moments. Artists painted stars with faces in them. Poets wrote about memory, about pain, about hope. A song called "Still With Us" reached every corner of Earth and beyond. It was soft and full of light. It ended with the words, "You are not gone. You are with us in every star." Even in space, small things changed. Varnock ships were tracked more closely. If they moved too close to human colonies, systems would shut down. Their messages would get scrambled. Sometimes their lights would blink in a pattern that spelled the names of the 10. The Varnock commanders were confused. They could not stop it. In the asteroid belts, human miners started refusing to sell materials to Varnock buyers. "We don't trade with murderers," one man said. His words were shared across thousands of stations. The Varnock tried to offer more money, but no one listened. One day, a Varnock patrol ship tried to enter a small human colony to check for security threats. As they approached, all the colony's lights turned red. The ground shook. Every machine shut down. The patrol ship floated helplessly, unable to scan, unable to move. After 10 minutes, a simple message appeared on their screen. "Not today." The ship left in silence. The Varnock began to ask questions. Who was behind these attacks? Why were no shots fired? Why was no one caught? And why was Earth not speaking? But Earth didn't need to speak. Every time a station went quiet. Every time a system failed. Every time a ship disappeared. The Varnock knew the truth. Someone was watching, someone who had not forgotten, someone who moved with care and purpose, someone who would not stop. The humans had started something different. Not a war, not a riot, but a steady, growing storm of actions, small actions, done well, done smart, done without hate. It was not revenge out of rage. It was justice out of love. Back on Earth, the families of the 10 smiled through their sadness. They saw what was happening. They knew the world had not forgotten. They watched as strangers became friends, as quiet people became brave, as pain became power. In a field outside a small town, a group of students built a statue. It had no names, just 10 stars made of light. At night, the stars blinked in a slow, calm rhythm. Each light pulsed once every 10 seconds. People came from far away just to sit near the lights. They sat in silence. They listened to the wind. And they remembered. Across the galaxy, other worlds began to notice. They saw that Earth had not answered with fire. They saw Earth had not begged. Earth had simply acted, and kept acting. It made others think. It made others wonder. Could they do the same? Could they stand up too? Maybe they could. Maybe it was time. But for Earth, this was only the beginning. The small actions were just the first steps. The stars were still wide. The path was still long. But the people of Earth had chosen to walk it not with anger but with purpose. And somewhere, deep in the shadows of space, a whisper moved through the dark. It was not loud. It did not shout. But it was strong. It said, "You took 10 of us." And it added, "We remember." The Varnock Empire first believed nothing was wrong. When small things started to go missing, they ignored them. One ship here, one broken signal there, it all seemed unimportant. They were used to power. They ruled with fear. They believed no one would dare to fight them, especially not Earth. But deep inside their empire, quiet fear began to grow. One of the Varnock leaders, a cold and clever commander named Varro, began to notice a pattern. He was not like the others. He did not laugh when human systems failed. He did not relax when human traders left. Instead, he studied everything. He looked at reports, searched maps, and reviewed every system failure. The more he looked, the more he understood. The things that were breaking were not random. There was a shape to the damage, a slow circle closing in. Every time something went wrong, a power cut, a signal lost, a machine shut down, it connected to the others. Voro saw that human actions were not wild or angry. They were smart. They were planned. He saw the truth before others did. The humans were preparing something. They were not just angry, they were patient. That made them dangerous. He brought his thoughts to the Varnock Council. He showed them the patterns. He warned them that Earth was not weak. He told them that these small actions were just the beginning. But the Council was proud. They believed Varro was afraid. They believed Earth was too soft to do real harm. They had forgotten what humans could do when they were hurt. While the Council ignored the warnings, things got worse. One of their largest cargo ships, carrying weapons and supplies, simply vanished. The tracking system stopped working. It left no message. It never arrived. The ship had been watched carefully, protected by strong codes, but still it was gone, and the humans said nothing. On the same day, a deep space station stopped responding. It had been built to listen for danger in the stars. Now its lights were off. Its data was lost. The workers inside were safe, but no one could fix the station. Nothing seemed broken, yet nothing worked. Varnock scientists were confused. Their smartest minds could not explain how everything failed without a single piece out of place. Then more strange things happened. Ships moved the wrong way. Maps changed by themselves. Security codes were erased overnight. The Varnock began to feel something they had not felt in a long time: fear. Their strong empire, with its sharp tools and loud voices, was starting to break. But it wasn't breaking from war. It was breaking from silence. The humans were doing something new. They were not attacking with guns or bombs. They were using skill, patience, and memory. They had not forgotten the 10 who were taken. They had not forgiven the pain. Every action now was a quiet answer to that pain. Voro grew more worried. He saw that the humans were inside their systems. He knew Earth was not only watching, they were shaping the future. And they were doing it in a way the Varnock could not stop. Every time the Varnock tried to fix something, the fix would fail. Every time they added new locks, they were already unlocked. It felt like Earth was always 10 steps ahead. The citizens of the Varnock Empire began to notice. Factories slowed down. Lights flickered in city towers. Food deliveries were late. Traders from other planets stopped visiting. Ships circled nervously before landing. People whispered in the streets. They had once believed the Empire was perfect. Now they saw cracks forming. In secret rooms, some leaders finally started to ask real questions. What if Earth was doing this on purpose? What if Earth was stronger than they thought? What if the humans were not afraid of the Varnock anymore? But many leaders still denied the truth. They told the people that the failures were just bad luck. They said storms in space had hit the machines. They said Earth was too kind to cause this kind of trouble. But even as they spoke, their own power systems blinked and faded. Then something happened that no one could ignore. For 7 long seconds, the main control center of the Varnock Empire went dark. The entire capital city lost power. Doors stopped opening. Lights went out. Walls turned cold. All screens showed one line of text: "We remember them." Those words were not shouted. They were whispered across every corner of the empire. The same words appeared in books, on coins, and in shipping logs. The Varnock tried to erase them, but they always came back. The message spread like fire. The humans had not spoken in anger. They had spoken in truth. They remembered, and they would not stop. Now the leaders began to panic. They held meetings that lasted all night. They argued. Some wanted to fight back. Others wanted to hide. A few wanted to speak with Earth to ask for peace, but none of them could agree. While they argued, more ships stopped working. More cities went dark. More machines failed. Voro stood alone in his office. He looked out over the empire he once thought was unshakable. Now it trembled. He thought of the humans, so quiet, so clever. They had not sent armies. They had sent a message. They had shown that love, memory, and pain could be stronger than any weapon. Voro whispered to himself, "They are not soft. They are not weak. They are awake." Across the stars, other races watched too. They had once feared the Varnock. Now they watched the Varnock fear Earth. Some began to cheer. Some sent quiet thanks to Earth. Others stayed silent, wondering what would happen next. The humans still said nothing, but they continued. Every ship they touched, every code they cracked, every system they silenced, it was a step closer to justice. It was not about hate. It was about never letting the 10 be forgotten. The Varnock finally understood that something had changed forever. Their empire was no longer safe. The humans had not declared war, but they had started something more powerful. They had begun a quiet revenge that could not be stopped. And the whole galaxy was watching. Far away from the Varnock Empire, Earth was quiet, but it was not still. Something important was happening. Leaders and thinkers had gathered in hidden places. There were no lights, no big flags, and no speeches. There were only people who had lost someone, people who remembered the 10, people who had decided to act, Not for revenge, not for war, but for justice. These meetings did not take place in bright rooms or open halls. They happened deep underground, inside quiet bunkers. They happened inside old research labs and abandoned spaceports. In one hidden base below the sands of the Sahara, some of Earth's best minds gathered. In another secret room inside the snowy mountains, generals and engineers worked side by side. No reporters were allowed. No cameras. The people inside these rooms had one goal: to make sure nothing like the Varnock attack would ever happen again. At the center of everything was a woman named Elira. She had once been a general. She had fought in space battles long ago, but she had retired. She had wanted peace. But after her daughter, Raina, was taken by the Varnock, Elira came back. She returned not with anger, but with purpose. She sat at the head of the main table. Around her were scientists, soldiers, coders, builders, and others who had once lived quiet lives. Now they all looked to her for guidance. Elira did not raise her voice. She did not slam her fist on the table. She spoke calmly and everyone listened. She said, "We cannot bring them back, but we can make sure they are not forgotten, and we can make sure no one ever dares to hurt Earth again." That became the mission. Earth would not fight a loud war. They would not throw bombs or launch big attacks. Instead, they would build a quiet plan. A plan that would move through the stars like wind. No one would see it coming, but everyone would feel it. The plan had 3 parts. The first part was knowledge. They would learn everything about the Varnock, how they moved, how they spoke, how they traded. Every signal, every map, every word would be studied. They would know the Varnock better than the Varnock knew themselves. Teams of human translators listened to messages day and night. Others mapped out every planet, every ship, every weak spot. No fact was too small. In a lab under the ocean, a group of young coders worked on a program called Whisper. It could slip into enemy networks without making a sound. It could read messages, copy files, and leave no trace. It was the perfect tool for a quiet war. The second part of the plan was movement. Earth would not stay in one place. Tiny human ships, hidden like space dust, would move all across the stars. Some would float near Varnock supply lines. Others would sit above planets and listen. A few would follow Varnock leaders without ever being seen. Each ship had only 1 or 2 people on board. These were not soldiers. They were listeners, watchers, messengers. They sent information back to Earth without speaking a single word. Their tools were small, their work silent, but every message they sent shaped the next step of the plan. The third part of the plan was memory. Earth had not forgotten the 10. Their names were whispered every day. Their stories were told in every meeting. Every step taken, every code written, every move made was done in their honor. On a quiet moon near Neptune, a monument was built underground. It had no guards, no signs, and no lights. But inside, 10 stars were carved into the stone. Around each star were notes, poems, and pictures from people who had loved the 10. Every person working on the plan made a promise there. A promise to protect, to remember, and to finish what the 10 had started. Elira visited the monument often. She sat in silence, placed her hand on the stone, and whispered her daughter's name. She did not cry anymore. Her eyes were sharp. Her heart was strong. She knew they were getting closer. Outside of the secret meetings, the rest of Earth continued to live. Children played, farmers worked, and families grew. But behind that normal life, many people were helping. Some gave their skills. Some gave their ideas. Some gave their time. Even small acts mattered. A group of artists created new ways to send messages without words. A group of teens designed patterns that could confuse enemy signals. One boy in a wheelchair created a power system that could run for years without breaking down. Everyone helped in their own way. Even Earth's animals were part of the plan. Tiny birds with metal wings were trained to carry microchips. Underwater whales wore small devices that picked up signals. Dogs on space stations barked in special patterns to warn of danger. Life and memory moved together. Other planets soon learned something was happening. They could not see what Earth was doing, but they could feel it. Ships flew with more purpose. Systems worked faster. Human faces looked different, calm but focused. Some leaders from other worlds came quietly to ask, "What is Earth planning?" But Earth gave no answer. Instead, they smiled, a sad, powerful smile. The plan was not a secret because it was hidden. The plan was a secret because it moved with the heart, and hearts do not shout. They whisper, they remember, and they act. One night during a strong storm on Mars, a message arrived from one of the listening ships. It showed that a Varnock data center had started to fall apart from inside. No attack, no bomb, just silence, then stillness. Alira read the message. She closed her eyes. She said softly, "We are ready." That moment marked the next step. The plan had moved from words to action. New systems turned on. New routes opened. New teams moved out. Every person knew what they had to do. No one was alone. No one was unsure. The plan was working not with speed but with strength. Back on Earth in the quiet rooms, more people joined the cause. Some were old. Some were young. Some came from high towers. Others came from small villages, but all of them believed in one thing: Earth would not be silent. They believed Earth's silence before had cost lives. Now Earth would speak, but in a new language. The language of action. The language of focus. The language of purpose. The plan also included healing. Inside every secret base was a room called the Circle. It was a quiet space with water, soft lights, and stars on the ceiling. People who were tired could go there. They could sit. They could breathe. They could remember the 10 and find strength again. Alira herself sat in the circle often. She said, "This is not just a plan of power. It is a plan of love." The Varnock had never understood love. That was their weakness. Earth's plan was built on it. Earth would not become like the Varnock. Earth would not rule with fear. Earth would protect with care. That was the true power behind the plan. The time for waiting was over. Earth had made its plan. It had studied, prepared, and remembered. Now it was time to act. Not loudly, not with fire, but with calm strength and careful hands. Earth would not rush. Earth would not scream. Earth would move like water, slow and steady, flowing into every crack the Varnock Empire had ignored. The first target was a Varnock outpost on the edge of space. It was not big. It was used to store parts and fuel. But it was important because it helped power ships that passed through that part of the galaxy. For years, it had served the Varnock without trouble. But one morning, it went silent. No alarms, no calls, no smoke. It simply stopped. The Varnock sent a ship to check. When they arrived, the doors were locked from the inside, the lights were off, the machines were frozen. The control center had been emptied. Not one human was there. But on a wall in simple white light was a message: "Leave Earth alone." The Varnock could not understand. Nothing was broken. Nothing had been stolen. But the outpost was dead, as if it had fallen asleep and never woke up. And this was only the beginning. A few days later, another station failed. This one held Varnock weapons, but when the guards tried to unlock the gates, the doors would not open. The codes had been changed. New words replaced the old ones. "You hurt the innocent. You will not hurt again." Once more, no one saw who did it. There were no bombs, no noise. But the result was the same. The station could no longer work. Over the next weeks, this happened again and again. Outposts were not destroyed. They were taken apart from the inside. Systems stopped working. Screens turned black. Storage doors locked forever. Guards stood with weapons in hand but could not fight what they could not see. The humans had begun to strike. But they did not kill. They did not destroy cities. They did not take prisoners. Instead, they left messages, soft ones, written in human code or glowing lights. They did not brag. They only gave warnings. One message said, 10 were taken, now we take 10 steps forward. Another said, this is not war, this is memory. The Varnock leaders were confused. They were used to war with fire, smoke, and noise. They were ready for enemies with big ships and angry voices. But Earth had sent something else, people who moved like shadows, words that cut deeper than swords, and actions that left no ashes behind. In space, human ships moved silently. They were small and fast. They looked like space rocks. They did not shoot. They listened, recorded, and sent signals back to Earth. When they saw a Varnock ship near a human world, they sent a warning. And when the warning was ignored, the Varnock ship would lose control. Its lights would blink and its engines would die. The ship would drift, quiet and lost until help came. The humans always made sure no one got hurt. Every person on the Varnock ships was safe. The ships were not crashed. They were not stolen. They were simply stopped. Over time, the Varnock grew afraid. They never saw who was behind these quiet attacks. They only saw the results. Their power was slipping, one tool at a time, one line of code at a time. And still, Earth said nothing. The attacks grew smarter. On planets where the Varnock ruled with fear, the lights began to change. They flickered in strange ways, but to those who understood human code, they were messages. They said, "We are here." They said, "You are not alone." They gave hope to those who had been silent for too long. On one Varnock world, a leader opened his tablet to find all his files replaced with the faces of the 10 humans who had been executed. Their eyes looked straight into his. Their names were written below in glowing letters. He threw the tablet away, but every device he used after that showed the same thing. He resigned the next day. The humans had found a new way to win. Not with force, but with fear. Not with death, but with truth. They showed the Varnock that Earth remembered everything and would not let it go. In a deep space mining center, the Varnock found their machines had all been reprogrammed. Every robot arm refused to dig. Every drill spun backwards. Every screen read, "You cannot build with blood." Again, no one had broken in. No one had left a trace. But the entire mining center had to be shut down. It had been turned into stone. The Varnock began to pull back. They stopped sending ships near human worlds. They closed outposts and told their traders to stay away from Earth. They tried to hide their fear behind proud words, but inside they were shaken. Because Earth had done something they had never expected. Earth had shown strength without shouting. Earth had attacked without hurting. Earth had warned without begging. And it worked. Across the galaxy, other species watched. Some smiled, some cheered, some sent secret thanks to Earth. Others began to dream. If Earth could stand up to the Varnock, maybe they could too. Back on Earth, the leaders met again. In quiet rooms, they reviewed what had happened. They saw that the plan was working, but they did not celebrate. They did not raise flags. They remembered the 10. They spoke their names. They lit 10 candles in silence. Then they got back to work. The attacks continued, but each one followed a rule. Do not kill, do not burn, do not break what cannot be fixed. The goal was not war. The goal was respect. The goal was peace, but peace with honor. Earth did not want to take over. It did not want to rule. It wanted to be heard. And now it was being heard. In the Varnock capital, a new map was placed on the Emperor's desk. It showed every system Earth had touched, every signal they had changed, every station that had gone dark. The map glowed red in dozens of places. The Emperor stared at it for a long time. He asked, "How did we let this happen?" No one could answer. The humans had not shouted. They had whispered. And the whispers had moved like wind, through wires, through space, through memory. One general stood up and said, "We pushed too far. We thought Earth was soft. We thought they would forget." The Emperor lowered his head, but they remembered. And they did. In homes across Earth, the 10 were still remembered. Their pictures hung in schools. Their names were sung in songs. People wore stars on their shirts, one for each life lost. Every quiet attack was not just an action, it was a promise. A promise that Earth would not stay silent when its people were hurt. Even children helped in their own way. They drew pictures, they made models, they shared stories of the 10. One little girl on a moon base made a drawing of Earth holding the stars. Her mother hung it on the wall of the control room, and it became a symbol of strength. The human attacks continued, but they never crossed a line. Outposts fell, but no one died. Ships stopped, but crews were safe. Messages were sent, but they were kind, even when firm. "Stop now or lose more," one message said. "Not hate, just memory," said another. And the Varnok finally understood. They had hurt Earth and thought no one would care. But Earth did care. And Earth had answered, not with war but with wisdom.